Well, Rizieq Shihab, or Habib Rizieq as he is popularly known, had been in self-imposed exile in Saudi Arabia for 3.5 years. He set up the Islamic Defenders Front in 1998 after Suharto resigned, and it was always a very edgy advocacy group. It was involved with mass street protests in late 2016 against the incumbent governor of Jakarta, the Christian Chinese Ahok. That led to him being charged on blasphemy charges, and it seemed like the Islamic Defenders Front was soaring high for a while, but then Habib Rizieq was charged with pornography charges, fled to Saudi Arabia, came back at the end of last year, and within a week, half a dozen of his followers had been involved in a traffic accident with police and were shot dead. And at the end of the month, he was arrested and the organisation was banned. He's been in jail ever since. He was charged with flouting COVID-19 mass gathering regulations. He had his daughter's wedding, he had a large welcome crowd at the airport, and many rallies, and some of these were apparently linked with key spreading events for COVID-19.
But he isn't expected to stay in jail for long. His supporters will be pleased about that.
They will be, and that's probably a blessing for everyone, really, because if they were very angry, they'd be very dangerous. He is getting 8 months in jail, but he's been there since late last year. He'll get some remission, so he could be out by July. And it's kind of a face-saving thing for him. It wasn't a serious crime. It was, flouting COVID gathering regulations. He paid a $2,000 fine. The more important thing is the banning of FPI, but already they said they'll form another organisation with the same acronym, different name. And it is very hard to deal with groups like this. In America, Ku Klux Klan has been around for decades and not banned. And now we've seen 300 far-right militia also not banned. It's that similar sort of problem.
Well, a new report has warned of a potential backlash over Joko Widodo's crackdown on radical leaders. What does this report say?
This report from the very respected IPAC and its chief investigator, Sidney Jones, says the government's got to tread very carefully. It's got to be very transparent with why it banned this group and banning other Islamist groups. It had famously banned Hizb ut-Tahrir in Indonesia several years ago without really justifying why it was doing it. It is seen by many, including many who are critical of these groups, as being overreach and an illiberal reaction from the government. So it's got to be careful that the cure is not worse than the disease and that it doesn't undermine its own moral legitimacy with these bans and make these people more credible. I mean, Habib Rizieq is already going to come out of jail as a hero in any case, whatever the legal status.
What has he been saying all this while? What are his intentions, do you think?
Look, the main problem with Rizieq is his incitement of hatred. His militia, sort of paramilitary groups, often are involved in raids on nightclubs, particularly during Ramadan, that sometimes lead to violence. But it's the incitement of hatred. And we saw that with the mass street protest. Many people protesting weren't involved in hatred, but the underlying dog whistle call was directed at Ahok because he was a Chinese Christian daring to be the governor of Jakarta. Habib Rizieq, of course, says he's a victim of an unjust regime. He calls openly for an Islamic State in Indonesia. He made sympathetic statements about the Islamic State movement in Syria, Iraq. Some of his members even left and joined that movement. So this is not a terrorist group, but it certainly around the edges is involved in inciting hatred, inciting violence in some cases, and some of the members even going on to terrorism. There are allegations that the Makassar church bombing in March had some links with some members with FDI. So the government's got to take this group seriously, but of course Rizieq's defence about being a victim of an unjust regime is a tricky defence to counter.
Well, Rizieq was jailed for breaching COVID restrictions. What is the pandemic situation like in Indonesia right now? Is it set to get worse?
There is the concern, Yvonne, that it will. Looking at India, in Malaysia today, which is only a tenth the size of Indonesia, there are no more intensive care beds available. Malaysia is dealing with a really difficult spiking up of COVID infections and deaths. Indonesia hasn't been in the same dire situation. A country of 275 million, let's hope that it doesn't go that way. But if what we're seeing happening in India and now touching into Southeast Asia with Malaysia and Thailand and Laos and Cambodia, comes to Indonesia and Philippines, these large countries, then we'll see the story of India repeated again. That's, too horrible to think about.
Indeed it is. Greg Barton, great to talk. Thanks for your insights.
Great chatting, Yvonne. Thanks very much.